You're seeing it everywhere now. And I don't just mean people joking online like, "Ha ha, I'm broke, so I'm on a buy nothing streak." I mean something way more serious is taking shape. Regular people are quietly building a new muscle, refusing to participate. And it's spreading because the math isn't mathing anymore. When grocery costs keep creeping up year after year, a lot of folks hit that moment where they realize, wait, I can't budget harder out of this. One congressional study summary floating around recently put the average annual grocery hit in 2025 at a few $100s more than the year before. And what's wild is it wasn't just one category, multiple everyday staples jumped. And then you look at the other side. Credit has been the duct tape holding this whole thing together, but that duct tape is peeling. The Fed has been tracking delinquency dynamics and basically showing how consumer stress can stabilize for a bit and then bite later, depending on lending standards and borrowing slowdowns. So what happens? People don't announce a revolution. They just stop. They start doing the thing that terrifies brands more than angry tweets. They make the purchase not happen. That's the buy-nothing rebellion in its pure form. Millions of micro decisions that add up to a macro problem for corporations. And here's the part most people don't clock. This isn't just spending less. It's rerouting demand into alternative systems. Repair, reuse, swap, community gifting, and local networks. The Buy Nothing Project itself claims millions of members, and whether you love the brand or hate the drama around it, the sheer scale tells you the behavior is real. People are organizing around not buying. That's not a fad. That's infrastructure. And once people build infrastructure for living without constant buying, it becomes harder to shove them back into the old pattern with a cute Super Bowl ad and 20% off. Now let me hit you with the sneaky part. This rebellion isn't only about high prices. It's also about people realizing they're being played in ways that are designed to be invisible. Shrinkflation is the perfect example because it doesn't feel like inflation at the register unless you're paying attention. You pick up the same product, the price looks familiar, and your brain goes, okay, fine. But you're getting less, which means your cost per unit went up quietly. And recent stat-style roundups have been pointing out just how widespread it's gotten across grocery categories, with a big chunk of items affected. That matters because shrinkflation doesn't just raise prices, it burns trust. It makes people feel stupid after the fact, like, hold up, did this bag always feel this light? And when trust breaks, buying becomes emotional. People stop impulse shopping because impulse requires a baseline belief that you're not getting hustled. So the buy nothing rebellion becomes a trust strike. People start scanning unit prices, comparing weights, switching to store brands, buying raw ingredients, or cutting whole categories. And when enough people do that, it forces a different kind of corporate response. Not just lower prices, but prove value. That's why you're seeing more talk about quality again, and why retailers are getting squeezed promotions become harder to run profitably when shoppers only show up for deals and then vanish. And I'm telling you, if you're watching this right now, thinking it's just about being cheap, you're missing the deeper psychological shift. People are training themselves to say no, and every no makes the next no easier. That's dangerous for the consumerist model because the model depends on you being tired, distracted, and slightly insecure. So you buy. The rebellion flips it. You get a tiny dopamine hit from not buying, from walking out, from keeping your money, from beating the system. And that's a habit brands do not know how to counter without actually changing. Here's where it gets even more interesting because a lot of people think this is just consumer behavior. Nah, this is starting to look like an economic pressure valve, like an informal boycott that isn't even coordinated, and that's why it can scale so fast. The traditional economy assumes households will absorb a lot: higher prices, worse quality, subscription creep, fees for everything, and they'll keep swiping the card because, hey, that's what people do. But the data signals are mixed now. On one hand, banks and big financial institutions will say consumers are resilient and spending is holding up in certain pockets. On the other hand, you can literally watch borrowing dynamics and delinquency discussions from the Fed and realize resilience isn't infinite, especially when interest rates are high and credit standards tighten. So, what do households do when they're boxed in? They don't have lobbying power. They don't have a seat at the board meeting. But they do have one lever: demand. And the Buy Nothing Rebellion is basically people pulling that lever without asking permission. You see it when folks cancel subscriptions and don't replace them. You see it when they stop upgrading phones. You see it when they decide, I'm wearing these shoes until the wheels fall off. You see it when they shift from brand new to secondhand, from buy to borrow, from own to share. And the most underrated part is how technology is making this easier. Neighborhood groups, gifting networks, resale platforms, repair tutorials. There's now a whole parallel economy for I refuse to buy new. That parallel economy didn't exist at scale 15 years ago. And it changes everything because once alternative channels capture a meaningful share of demand, big retailers don't just lose a sale, they lose the habit of buying from them. That's like losing a subscription, except it's the subscription of someone's entire lifestyle. And look, the reason this is so powerful is because it hits corporations in the exact spot they worship: forecasting. Businesses can handle angry customers. They can handle negative PR. What they struggle with is demand that becomes unpredictable because millions of people decide, I'm not playing at the same time for different reasons. Minimalists do it to reclaim peace. Families do it because the bills are crushing them. Young people do it because they're cynical about consumer culture. And older folks do it because they remember when stuff didn't fall apart in 6 months. Those are different motivations, but they produce the same outcome: fewer purchases. And when fewer purchases happen, the whole stack starts wobbling: inventory planning, revenue projections, marketing ROI, even employment in retail and shipping. That's why this isn't just a trend. It's a structural change in behavior. And it's already being talked about in the broader culture as an explicit pushback against hyper-consumer events like the way Buy Nothing Day keeps resurfacing as an anti-Black Friday signal. The wild part? This rebellion doesn't require perfection. You don't have to buy nothing. You just have to buy less, strategically, consistently, and suddenly you're not a passive consumer anymore. You're a negotiator. You're a regulator. You're the one setting terms. And once enough people do that, prices and product quality don't just maybe change. They have to, because greed eventually runs into the wall of reality. People can't pay what they're demanding, and they don't trust what they're selling. Let me tell you what a lot of people still don't understand about this buy nothing rebellion. It's not just starving corporations of cash for a week. It's reprogramming your default settings. For decades, the system trained you to treat boredom like an emergency and shopping like medicine. You feel stressed? Buy something. You feel behind in life? Upgrade something. You feel like you need a fresh start, new outfit, new gadget, new subscription, new cart full of stuff you didn't even know existed until an algorithm put it in your face at 11:47 p.m. But what's happening now is different people are learning to sit with the urge and not feed it. And when that happens at scale, the whole business model starts to wobble because so much of retail is built on impulse and emotional spending. You can see the pressure in how retailers are talking about cautious consumers and discounting wars like what's hitting homeware and discretionary categories right now, where even big names are warning that shoppers are pulling back and only responding to promos. And the sneaky part is the rebellion is getting smarter. People are not just buying less, they're building friction into their own lives on purpose. They're doing no-buy rules like 24-hour waits, cash-only months, one in, one out, and no new clothes until I repair 5 items. That's not random. That's behavioral design. It's like people accidentally discovered what addiction researchers already know. If you can break the loop cue, craving, reward, you win. So now you've got millions of people hacking their own psychology at the same time. And the result is brutal for the companies that depend on you being impulsive. And when you add the economic reality spending growth slowing in real terms across parts of 2025, even as essentials keep biting, this turns from a minimalist vibe into a mass survival strategy with a moral backbone. Now, here's the part most people don't talk about because it sounds boring, but it's actually where the rebellion becomes a wrecking ball. Repair. Repair is the anti-consumer cheat code, because every repaired item is a purchase that didn't happen, and it's not just one lost sale. It's a lost replacement cycle. That's the part that scares manufacturers. If you repair a phone, you didn't just skip one purchase. You might have delayed the next 2 upgrades. And this is why right to repair has turned into a real policy battlefield, not just a nerd issue. In the EU, there's already a directive promoting repair of goods adopted in June 2024, in force July 2024, with member states needing to apply it from July 31st, 2026. That's not some abstract sustainability dream, that's a timeline. And what that means on the ground is more pressure to make repairs accessible, more incentives to repair instead of replace, more consumer expectations that if I own it, I should be able to fix it. And once that expectation spreads, it changes the culture. You start seeing repair cafes, tool libraries, swap meets, neighborhood groups where people trade skills. I'll fix your lamp if you help me patch drywall. And suddenly, the economy starts to look less like buy, and more like maintain, extend, reuse. That's a rebellion, because it makes your paycheck go further without you having to beg for a raise, and it makes brands compete on durability again. And here's the kicker. AI and social platforms are accidentally fueling it. People who never would have opened a repair manual are watching 90-second repair tutorials and realizing, wait, I can do this. You're not just refusing to buy, you're refusing to be helpless. That mindset is contagious. And while all that's happening, the secondhand market is quietly becoming the shadow retail system that corporations can't fully control. This is where the buy nothing rebellion stops being personal and starts being structural, commerce. Because secondhand doesn't just save you money, it steals demand from new, and it's getting normalized fast. ThreadUp's resale reporting keeps pushing the idea that resale is growing and pulling in both consumers and retailers into the ecosystem. And broader market projections for Europe are talking about secondhand growing from tens of billions in 2025 to well over $100 billion by 2035 with double-digit CAGR. Again, projections aren't guarantees, but the direction tells you adoption is rising. So what does that mean for the rebellion? It means people aren't just saying no. They're saying, I'll get what I need, but I'm not paying your markup. They're buying used furniture, used tools, last season jackets, refurbished electronics, and they're doing it with zero shame now. And when that happens, brands have to fight on two fronts, convincing you to buy at all and convincing you to buy new. That's why you're seeing retailers panic about discretionary softness and why discounting is getting so aggressive during peak seasons, because they're competing with your ability to simply opt out and go secondhand instead. And here's the most underrated twist. Secondhand turns every product into a long-life asset, which is basically the opposite of planned obsolescence culture. If a product has a strong resale value, consumers start demanding build quality. They start thinking like owners, not just shoppers. And when owners show up, the whole game changes. You know what really makes this buy nothing rebellion terrifying for the people at the top? It's not the fact that you skip a shopping trip. It's the fact that you start budgeting like a strategist. And once you do that, you stop being predictable. The old system needs you predictable. Payday hits. You treat yourself. You finance the rest. And the machine keeps humming. But the rebellion is teaching people to treat their money like ammunition, only spend when it actually moves your life forward. And what's pushing folks into that mindset isn't just vibes, it's pressure. We're sitting in a period where the credit card world is getting politically messy. Banks are publicly arguing about affordability policies, and people are staring at interest rates like, so you want me to carry a balance at what exactly? You can literally see this debate spilling into headlines right now, because the idea of capping credit card rates is being floated at the national level, and the biggest banks are already warning it would change who gets access to credit at all. Whether you support caps or not, that conversation alone tells you something. The country is acknowledging credit is becoming a pressure point, not a convenience. Meanwhile, the Fed is tracking delinquency dynamics and pointing to factors like rising aggregate credit card debt and lending standards as key predictors for delinquency changes. So regular people are doing the most rational thing possible. They're refusing to be the shock absorber. They're stepping out of the swipe now, suffer later loop. And what's crazy is how quickly that becomes a culture. You can see it in these viral self-control challenges like Project Pan in beauty, where people are basically turning restraint into a game. Inventory what you already have, use it up, share progress, Get the dopamine from finishing instead of buying. That's not small. That's a behavioral revolution because once you train yourself to get satisfaction from not buying, corporate persuasion loses its magic. Ads don't hit the same. Limited time offer doesn't spike your heart rate. You start seeing marketing as a trap instead of entertainment. And once enough people do that, companies can't just tweak a slogan, they have to change the underlying deal. And this is where it goes from, I'm saving money, to, this could change everything, because the rebellion is colliding with something even bigger, policy and infrastructure that makes buying less easier than buying more. The EU's Repair of Goods Directive is the perfect example, adopted June 13th, 2024, in force July 30th, 2024, and member states have to apply it from July 30th, 2026. That date matters because it's not theoretical anymore. It means repair is being pushed as a default, not a niche hobby. And when repair becomes normal, when you can expect parts, access services, compare repair options, the replacement treadmill slows down. That is a direct hit to a huge chunk of modern revenue models that rely on churn, replace, upgrade, replace, upgrade. So now your buy nothing isn't just you being stubborn. It's you stepping into a world that's gradually being redesigned to support your refusal. And it stacks with the other parallel systems: re-commerce, refurbished electronics, local swap groups, tool libraries, community gifting networks. The McKinsey-style consumer trend reporting has been pointing out that post-pandemic behavioral shifts have stuck around trust, value perception, how people define worth it has changed, and those sticky shifts are exactly the soil this rebellion grows in. Put it all together, and you get a future where shopping stops being the default recreational activity. People stop outsourcing identity to brands. They stop buying status and start buying durability. They stop paying for convenience at any price and start calculating unit costs, lifespans, repairability, and resale value like they're running a household CFO office. And when millions of households start behaving like CFOs, not consumers, the economy doesn't just wobble, it rebalances. Companies either compete on real value again, or they get starved out by a population that finally learned the most dangerous word in capitalism: no.